Welcome. Today's episode, we have a very exciting guest. For those of you just joining the podcast, we are Finesse Force and specialize in helping B2B SaaS and AI companies scale their revenue. So if you want to learn how to take your business to the next level, make sure to stick around. And if you're interested in a free growth consultation, just drop us a word, growth, in the DMs. Today, we are here with Austin Gunter, VP of Marketing at Productiv. How are you?
Hey, Sarah, I'm great. It's great to meet you. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, looking forward to our conversation. So let's start with the 10,000-foot view. Productive helps enterprises manage and optimize their software stack. But for those less familiar, can you walk us through what Productive does in your role as VP of Marketing?
So let me actually zoom out a little bit. So I'm on a contract at Productive. I do a lot of go-to-market consulting with a lot of folks. So I work with early stage startups, and I've got a very long-term contract with Productive. I've worked with their COO and head of HR a couple of times before. So that's my background. What Productive is doing is solving the problem of SaaS proliferation. So everybody talks about digital transformation and moving to the cloud and stuff. The company was started by the person behind Google Analytics, and they were basically seeing all of these IT departments having, a million SaaS applications exploding into their organization. Like Salesforce is big. Innovation was middle finger to your IT department. We can just you don't have to go through them to buy software. And that was great, except now the IT department has no visibility, doesn't know if something's secure or not, et cetera. So this became really, really problematic in 2020 when the pandemic hit, where everybody was like, oh, just open the floodgates. We need to enable our employees. And so what happened as a result of that was people would have 300, 600, over 1,000 SaaS applications that had never been reviewed. You had no visibility into whether they're actually being used or not. And now as the interest rates have gone up, there's been this budgetary pressure going in the opposite direction saying, hey, finance comes to IT and goes, yo, you need to cut your budget by, double digit percentage points. And IT's like, shoot, I don't know where, who signed up for this application, who's actually using it, et cetera. So Productive gives you that visibility so you can disposition and then right size your ecosystem and basically just get ahead of it.
Right, you're kind of like a procurement oversight, it sounds like.
Yeah, so there's this really interesting combination workflow where IT does part of it, procurement does part of it, finance does part of it, and Productive, part of the IP of Productive is sort of being the central conversational point to automate some of the conversations that happen across all those teams and give the visibility so that everybody can be like, okay, these dollars are being spent in the right way. We are happy with the capabilities we're getting with this application. We're happy with the usage that we're getting, et cetera.
So next question, the AI wave has been crashing over everything lately. It's kind of the
Oh.
next tech wave. I guess Internet of Things was kind of the last one. And now everything is about AI. So what do you see as the real practical ways AI is shaping software development and management today? And kind of where is the hype distracting from real progress?
I think the hype on this one actually may be pretty real, candidly. One of my first clients was this company called AirKit, and the CTO, co-founder of that company, is now the head of AI at Salesforce. And one of the things that he said to us was, this was right as OpenAI and ChatGPT were becoming a thing. And he basically said, you have to be playing around with this stuff every day, because if you're not, you're going to miss an opportunity that will either get you ahead or at least just keep you in the game, tech job perspective. And I took that to heart. And so I'm learning Korean right now because I'm studying, I study Qigong and Tai Chi, and my teachers just happen to be Korean and they don't speak great English. So I'm like, well, I might as well learn some Korean so I can learn this better. And then learning a new language that has no overlap with English. There's not there's not a lot of software that did that the way that I liked it. I didn't like Duolingo, et cetera. So I pulled up Replit because I'd heard about Replit. I'm like, I wonder if I can just build a flashcard app that I like that also gives me audio. So I literally spent a weekend over Valentine's Day just vibe coding this website, and it works. You can go to my Replit, it's just random Replit URL and sign up, and you upload these text files of flashcards that I make with Claude. I'm like, make me a bunch of flashcards that in a CSV that about this topic, and then it connects to the OpenAI text to speech API. Every single flashcard, I can listen to the Korean and read the Hangul, the Korean alphabet and stuff. when you're asking about like the actual limitations, one of the things that will be really interesting to see is like over the next couple of years, if like, can we actually write non-buggy software? But it's just like when you're like, whenever I have Claude like draft something for me, if I don't go back through and put myself into an edit process, it reads like Claude wrote it. Right. And I think the same thing is really true with software development too. It's like, if you don't actually have a human being, I guess, like exercising taste, I think you still end up with like a subpar product.
Yeah, I think like another way that it could be shaping software development, and I've had this conversation with a couple people, is that like all the apps that you have on your iPhone might just be gone because you might not actually need them anymore.
Totally.
And so that just kind of wowed me.
Yeah, like I don't Google stuff anymore. I've got Claude and then I use Grok because Grok can like, it'll like do all the synthesis for me, and like
Mhm.
even Perplexity, like I use Perplexity. I didn't think it was that good. And now I'm using Grok for it. Like that's completely disappeared. Like you don't need to use Yelp anymore because you can do the same thing. Like it really is like, I was describing this to somebody, like AI is like it takes 2 points in time or 2 points in space and just like connects them together. And so like all that surface area is just gone now. And like in a complete we're just like a completely new world.
It is a new world. So let's talk about some trends of that new world. Like, what broader trends are you seeing in how organizations are approaching software procurement, usage, and lifecycle management, and kind of what's shifting? So, this is a really good kind of use case for Proactive.
So there's all this stuff over the last couple of years about how to get visibility and get ahead of that. But you may have an approved product, but everybody's introducing AI capabilities into their product. And so there's this thing called shadow AI. And I'm actually going to release some content about this with our CISO and the head of privacy, or the former head of privacy engineering of Snapchat, her name's Shukita, talking about how do you make sure that as every application inside of your portfolio, inside of your firewall is going to start doing Gen AI or Shadow AI, are they dispositioning your data correctly? Right. So that's just like the next thing that IT leaders are looking.
Time will tell.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of zoom into your daily operations. So,
Sure.
what are you kind of focused on the day to day right now? And for you, kind of leading the marketing team, and it sounds like helping them, lay the groundwork and get marketing and sales function up and running.
Mhm.
What are the things that matter to you most?
Um, that's a really great question. Like, um, I've seen a lot of good marketing. I've seen a lot of bad marketing. I've been a part of both. I've contributed to both. Um, and Productiv was the first SaaS management platform, and and it's become a very crowded space. And part of why they brought me on is one of the things that I'm really good at is like repositioning a company and then rebuilding a strategy. And the company had moved very far over into procurement, which you called out very astutely earlier. And we realized that procurement is a really critical part of the SaaS management process, but IT is actually the buyer. And so what I've been doing is I remessaged the company in the fall and have a handful of like new pages out on the website. But there's, this 2 year period where we were very focused on the procurement space, right? And we have to like, I wouldn't say unwind it, but like weave those things together because they are a part of the greater narrative. And some of Productive's best customers and happiest customers are at the intersection of procurement and IT. Um, but for me, it always starts with like, who's the ICP and what's the messaging flows from that. The reasons that the companies that I've been a part of that have like not succeeded or have stalled out, it was often because there was like too many ICPs, right?
Mm,
And
interesting.
like the thing that, and somebody else told me this really early in my career, but it's like you earn the right to additional ICPs based on repeatability. And so the thing that I tell founders is if your sales process and your marketing isn't on lock, repeat, consistent, predictable / boring, then you can't sell to multiple people, right? Or to multiple types of companies. And the repeatability thing I think really appeals to an engineering mind because they think about systems, and most of the founders that I've worked with come from an engineering background. And it's often the first time that they go, you're right. Sales and marketing should feel like a repeatable, consistent system, right? Not just like, weird people with writing degrees, finger painting all over my business. Like there actually should be some consistency in process and numerical foundation to stuff. So if you have like one ICP, great, then you know exactly what targeting to put in to your ad platforms, right? You know what the demographic, firmographic, psychographic, whatever, what the types of people and job titles and company characteristics are to go after. And as a result of that, you will have the same conversations from a marketing perspective, from a sales perspective. And so that means when somebody converts on your website or converts on an ad, that conversion invariably goes into a spreadsheet, as you know. Right. And like the whole thing about it is like, you got to make that spreadsheet number go up and to the right. But the thing that founders sort of forget about is that if you're going to put things in a spreadsheet, you have to represent them the same way. Where like one conversion, if one conversion doesn't equal one, if one ICP is one conversion, but another ICP is another conversion, then one does not actually equal one inside of that math. And then your sales cycle will be unpredictable and you'll be confused about things, or your cost per conversion or your cost per opportunity will be weird. And then you'll end up in a board meeting and somebody will be like, why aren't you running a business? Why are you still running a consultancy? Why does it still feel like a chaotic startup? And so that's, I'm very grateful to say that we're seeing some really exciting pipeline growth as a result of this work that is feeding into a good sales motion right now.
That's great. I'm going to ask you, I guess, kind of a dangerous question, but I think as marketers, we all come across this. So how are sales and marketing partnering together? And, kind of what are you doing to make sure that it's, great partnership?
This is a really interesting question. I work really hard to so I think sales has one of the hardest jobs because there's this it's the buck stops here and they're doing all this hand-to-hand combat with customers. And one of the things that the Productiv CEO, he's a former CRO, and he and I were having a great conversation about this. And he goes, I'm a go-to-market CEO, not a product CEO. Right. Which means I've had product CEOs tell me to sell, something when their baby was ugly. And he goes, I will tell you, like you and I can speak as go-to-market folks that sometimes like the product just needs help. Right. And that can't be sales and marketing's fault. And you have to be able to have a healthy conversation about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so like in the spirit of that, the thing that I say sales is I'm going to start putting these leads through. Right. And I want to have a daily conversation with you about the quality of them. And you go back to that ICP. Do we agree that these are the titles? These are the types of companies. This is the company list. Great. I'm going to make sure that all of our lead generation efforts draw those companies in. And as marketing, the easiest way to create a collaborative relationship is to say, do you like these leads? Why or why not? And then if they say no, then you're like, okay, tell me what you'd like differently. And then you can just go tweak what you're doing and adjust with that. Right. And then it feels that, they feel like you're hearing them and supporting them. And as long as that's happening and you're like reasonably good at your craft, then most of your problems get avoided. Right.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that you're saying. And I think marketing can also, help sales throughout the sales funnel just by managing velocity and understanding, what could be impacting that. I've led also SDR teams. So
Totally.
implementing, the email outreach systems. And I think there's some great way. And if you have the right messaging and you've got the right assets to support it, you can always generate great leads from that as well.
Totally.
And sometimes companies come out with different capabilities or features, and that does open up the door for another ICP. You just kind of go through that whole launch process of preparing the go-to-market for and messaging for something new and assets and everything to support that. So that it's growth.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And like you have to keep growing,
Yeah.
it's just like it's agreeing about what it takes to grow. Like when people are like, hey, we're going to like go to a new country this year. I'm like, no, you're not. Like you're like the rest of these things aren't consistent and you're definitely not going to do it with the existing staff, you know? right? You take your best folks who develop a new market, and then they hand it off to somebody when it's consistent, and then you send them on to the next one, right? But it's additional headcount, right? And you have to think about it that way. If you can't afford that from a headcount perspective, then you probably can't actually afford to expand, and you have no idea how the work is going to sort of like domino on your team.
How big is your team right now?
The marketing team at Productiv is about 5 folks right now across contractors and full-time.
Got it. Got it.
And we are actively hiring for a technical product marketer.
Got it. Put the plug out there.
That's right. That's right.
So kind of like speaking about the space, and I'm kind of going back a little bit, but back to the product, like how do you see yourselves differentiate compared to, you mentioned that there's a lot of competitors in the space. So like what are your key differentiators?
You talked about the procurement and finance aspect of IT. So the thing that we believe is that IT is ultimately responsible for all these applications, even though the business or shadow IT has sort of like led the way in bringing these applications into the ecosystem, into the portfolio. And we had a conversation with the CIO of Lyft who was talking about, I love shadow IT. I just want the right amount of process so that my teams have visibility and can disposition those applications so that we just harness the business, so it's business led IT. And part of how Productiv helps IT teams do that is by giving them like a lot of like very granular visibility into not just like, um, are you like, do you have people SSO logging into this application? Because that doesn't actually show feature engagement, but we can line up feature usage. So like one of our customers in 2020 was wondering if folks were turning their cameras on and staying connected with each other. And you can just click onto there was Zoom, right? They were using Zoom for video. I'm not going to say the customer name, but they were able to just like click on the Zoom application inside of Productiv, and then you can see which teams and which employees are flipping their cameras on. So you have this really, really cool feature level of visibility where the platonic ideal for an IT team is going, here are the dollars that we have to spend, and then this is the capability that we're unlocking within the organization. And what that does is it sort of like creates a lot of transparency and visibility for the procurement team, because they're like, yes, this renewal is the right amount of seats and the right amount of licenses. We actually can expand this with confidence rather than being surprised by that or expanding just because it was in the contract and you didn't actually understand usage. And then finance, because it's not that finance hates spending money. I've worked with some amazing finance people, and they're not trying to be cheap. What they're trying to be is thoughtful about the dollars and how that grows the business or supports something. And so that's what Productiv does, is it makes those conversations extremely easy. And then we also have these really cool automations where you have to have all these conversations between IT and procurement and security and finance, and you can build these workflows to automate that. So it's just happening in Slack. It's like you get assigned the next thing, you check your box, and then it goes on to the next person and the next person and the next person. So there's no meetings. The data just flows into the system, and you have this contract system of record.
Right. That's good. And you guys probably do help with managing auto renewals, because if you got this, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. So the trick there, and this is where we start with every single customer, is let's get you out of like the alert that comes 2 weeks before a renewal and gets you 90 days out or 6 months out from a renewal. Because once you get that, because like even if you're a month out, that's still not enough time to like switch applications or do anything else, because there might be a data migration or whatever. So you need 90 days to plan. And so that's literally the first place we start with every single customer. So we get all their contracts in one place, right? We just automatically do that. And then we have some alerting where you can start saying, okay, these are the upcoming renewals. These are the upcoming renewals that are most expensive or in question or whatever, and apply a status to every single application and every single renewal. And then the status makes it clear what action needs to be taken for an IT person. So it takes the guesswork out of SaaS management.
Yeah, it's also very, very useful. I worked for a startup called Evisort, contract lifecycle management. They just
Yeah.
got acquired by Workday. And that was like the first use case, actually, when we first went out to market many years ago, around the time of the pandemic. So it was a very big deal for a lot of people, especially, things around like real estate as well if you were an actual
Yep.
store. So kind of a big deal. Okay, let's go back to the team a little bit and give, a little plug towards the technical product marketer that you're looking for. And so I'm curious to know, like, you're kind of building a team, you've got some full-time people, you've got some, contractors. Kind of what are you doing to attract talent? Why would people want to work at Productive? And maybe how is the tech landscape changing to impact, how people are actually working today?
So Productive's fully remote. And I think and I say this, I'm very lucky to be able to say this, but it really is the best like leadership and executive team that I've ever been a part of in my career. The folks everybody's, the entire executive team is new. And from a cultural perspective, everybody is, man, I have so much respect for how seriously everybody takes their job and how much of a high performer they are. Like they're all just like masters of their craft, which makes you feel good. And everybody's also like, I was joking that we're all kind of feelers, like high conscientiousness people, right? Who are very relationship driven and thoughtful, which isn't to say like overly sensitive, like we're still professionals. But I value the, like, how are you doing? I'm paying attention to you. I care about you. Did you have a bad day? That sort of thing. And that's creating, like, for me, like, I don't do like the work-life balance sort of thing. It's like, what I mean by that is, like, if I don't like the work that I'm doing, then I'll leave, because it affects my life too much. Right. And I certainly stop working when I stop working at the end of the day. But I care about bringing like humanity into the workplace. One of the things that I love about remote work is it's allowed people who like have families or, like have new children to be able to like continue to work. And it's like, hey, I'm going to turn my camera off because like my child needs something, or I'm with my baby, or things like that. Like I really love that and support that. And I think that opens up a lot of opportunities for companies to have really amazing talent who otherwise would be out of the workforce, and for parents to be working. Right. And so like, those are like values that I have. Those are values that representative Productive. We've got 2 moms on the executive team, which is really, really cool. So I think like those are the things that like represent who we are as a company. Trying to think what else. Like the remote thing is good. We're still valuing getting people together. And like that happens when it needs to happen. And so like for this role in particular, the technical product marketer, I've had a lot of success when I have hired people who had subject matter expertise around the product and the space, who either were just passionate about like telling stories and writing, or viewed like a product marketing role as a stepping stone to a product role or something like that. Right. And so the thing that I'm always kind of looking for when I'm hiring somebody is, match for aptitude. And then I always ask, like, what does this job get you? And like, not everybody will answer that honestly, because they don't trust that you actually want to know what's in it for them. But I'm like, let's just assume that like you're going to get paid, like all of that stuff like is going to get taken care of because you're talented and you're smart and you're motivated. I want to know what you get next. Like what does this job get you? And if I don't like the answer to that, or if they don't give me an honest answer, then I'm assuming they're like hiding their ambition, or they're not very ambitious. But like, I want to find the person who's like, yeah, like this job gets me this in a couple of years, or I'm making this with my life. I'm like, sick, cool. Now I know what you care about, and I can make sure that like, as much as possible, I'm aligning the work that you're doing, what you're getting exposure to, what you're getting to learn with that thing that you actually care about. And like, that at the end of the day is the thing that makes a difference in somebody's career. And if I make sure you're getting what you want, then all the things that I care about should fall pretty naturally, out of the back end. And I won't have to like manage them, because because again, it's like a first principles thing. If you're happy and fulfilled and getting the things that you want, then your contributions will be so much greater than they would have been if you were just like trying to phone it in.
It sounds like Productive, it has really good values, and it sounds like a great place to work and excellent leadership. Sounds like you're a really good manager. So someone would be lucky to work with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we've talked a lot about the product. Why don't we talk about a good success story? How has a customer implemented Productive? What problem did it solve for them? And maybe talk a little bit about the impact that it had.
So like we just released a case study for Gainsight. Like Okay, so we were talking about the renewal question earlier, right? Where a company is going to have like, all their renewals coming up and they're going to have all this SaaS. And that SaaS hasn't necessarily been like dispositioned. Nobody's thought about like, are we, actually spending this money properly? So like their Gainsight they cut 1 million, or like 1.2 million in spend over 104 renewals
Wow.
with Productiv. But again, like if you don't have a tool giving you that visibility into these upcoming renewals with enough time to do the analysis and then figure out the migration plan or have the right strategy, then you miss out on these savings. Because because otherwise the IT department is literally the whole time just being like, yes, I'm going to reset your password. Yes, I can get you back into this application, et cetera. So that's like one example out of like dozens that we have on our resources page.
Sounds great. So, like, what's next? I know that you mentioned that you were talking about the roadmap. Kind of what's the vision of the company going forward, and where do you see yourself in, a year or 2 years from now?
So I think Productiv is the thing that I'm really excited about is that our head of product, Molly Levy, is one of the best product people I've ever worked with in my life. Um, she she has a really cool mandate because our CEO Sean is giving us a lot of leeway as an executive team to think about the challenges of a market that's crowded with the way that AI is making its way into everything. So a lot of the questions that we're asking, I don't know that we necessarily have answers to all these things. I have some of the answers, but they're coming up in some launches in the next 3 months, so I don't want to like give too much away.
Get it?
But like we are thinking about what it means to identify um, the the best places where we can automate the product or enrich the product with AI. So one of the things, and we actually launched this on Tuesday. Um, One of the challenges IT leaders run into is, where did this app come from? What is it even? And when you have 600 or 1,000 applications in your ecosystem, like that shows up all the time. And so what we've done is we've pulled some AI and that creates a summary description of an application and its capabilities, and then you can map those capabilities across your ecosystem. So like, do you need 9 whiteboarding tools? No, you probably don't, right? But like Zoom has one and Miro has one and FigJam has one. Well, Miro and FigJam, those are definitely duplicative, but like Zoom's is not duplicative. And then you have to be thoughtful about that. One of the things that happened internally at Productiv was, we had all these Loom licenses. Well, Zoom just released this capability called Zoom Clips, which is almost the same thing. It's not totally, but it's, if you want to just like do a quick like video recording and send it to somebody, it works. And so this similar apps capability that we just launched this week, basically like side by side inside of the product, allows IT folks to just look and compare their applications. And then right below how the applications are the same, we show the usage. So you can start building that capability map for your organization. So that's like one example of how we're looking at this. How we collect data into the platform in a more automated fashion with AI to speed that process up. And then how do we enrich that? And then how do we take the enriched data? Because it's like, okay, how do I, like, IT people are looking for what's the status of this application? And the status informs action. And that in and of itself is a huge challenge when you've got like 600 applications or 600 browser extensions. Like how do you apply a status to each one of those? And so we're working on ways to automatically apply a status to each one of those things, and then let that be sort of like the starting place for the application. And then we already have this workflow capability to automate the conversations that applications have, and then be able to also over time build ways to automate the activities that IT folks have to like manually do on a day-to-day basis.
Sounds great. Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So every team has a dragon to slay. If you had a magic wand to fix one challenge immediately on the marketing team or, somewhere else, what would that be?
You remember in 2018 when like Facebook, you could get a cost per lead at $20 a pop. You remember that?
Sure.
So like that's what I would do if I could wave a magic wand. That's what I everybody talks about, like the conversation that I have with all the finance folks that I work with at this point is that like the economics of SaaS are different than they were before the pandemic. Cost per lead now is like $500, full stop. But like when we were doing stuff at Gremlin, when we were blowing up, when money was free because the interest rate was zero, you could just like I was getting these like site reliability engineer, DevOps engineer leads for 20 to $30 on Facebook and on AdWords. And that's what I want back, because that brings some economics back that, and it like enables this massive growth trajectory. But it's like, with anything, you democratize something, then everybody floods in. Well, startups, like all the processes have been written down. There've been a million great podcasts where people have gotten to learn about this stuff. And then all the channels have gotten saturated. And so everything's just gotten more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So we're having to find other ways to like differentiate our performance.
Got it. Got it. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, kind of final thought, last
Mhm.
question behind all the buzz. If we set AI aside for a moment, what are kind of the deeper or less talked about shifts you think will actually shape the next generation of software? So kind of like what's beyond AI, if there is something.
Think so. I'm going to answer this question maybe not in a way that you expected, but there was a whole generation of us that got kind of like a bunch of free shots on goal to learn in software and tech because there was so much margin.
Mhm.
And like we were just talking about, tech is consolidating itself right now. A lot of the jobs that were available are going away. And so one of the things that I really think is going to shape this industry going forward is, the avenues in are going to be more difficult. It's not just going to be this y'all come sort of situation. Like you can't get an engineering thing from a boot camp and expect to get a job. You're going to have to like actually show some work on something meaningful, right? Which automatically makes it more difficult. I think some of that's good. I think some of that's bad, right? Like, then there's a lot of money at stake. People have these high salaries and you can't just like walk into a 150, $200,000 salary anymore. The other thing that I tell the startups that I advise is that, like there was that cliche from Andreessen that like software is eating the world, where I think it actually ate it all. Right. And so every time you set like I think the reason ICP is it really in vogue right now is that every time when you're selling software now, you're not selling it greenfield, right? You're competing for budget with all this like ancillary features and capabilities. And you have to like integrate with those systems. And then your value is kind of like measured against stuff like, like marketing teams need HubSpot or they need some other CRM, but they don't necessarily need not every startup needs Optimizely, you know? And all these tools are kind of like stacking I call them optimizations rather than like, foundational things. It's really hard to sell an optimization, but like the startups that I've seen have the most success right now are selling into like old school organizations like warehousing. There's a startup that I invested a little bit of money in it's like a ERP for modular construction companies, right? And it's like great. These like folks, these blue collar folks have no idea how to use. They were just doing everything in a spreadsheet. And like another company that I worked with a couple of years ago was a form builder for South American remote nature field operators, right? And they were just like revenue hand over fist. And so the thing that I would recommend folks do is like, you may know the software world super well, but like where the opportunities will come from will be in these like old school places, and like maybe even like in international markets that you're not familiar with. There's still a ton of opportunity out there, but like stop stacking more software on top of more software, because the reason that software took off in the first place was because it didn't exist. So find the places where it doesn't exist, because that will make your adoption and your sales and your like the process of proving value much greater.
Yeah, it's looking for the opportunity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I've gone to trade shows where it's just a ton of marketing software and you don't even know where to begin.
Totally. Yeah. It's like, where do I even start? And like, why are you forcing me to learn this like esoteric use case?
Yep. Yep. Agree. Well, that's it, Austin. Thank you very much for being on the podcast. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun, Sarah.